Hello everyone, my name is Carl. I go with my artist producer name as Galatra, and I'm here to bring you part 2 of the High Slicer tutorial series. Okay, as you can see, I pull up my High Slicer Beats VST program again that shows you how the High Slicer is set up along with my default preset program as I see in my screen. Okay, where we're going to continue on where we left off from part 1, where I'm going to show you the FX toolchain and the groove editor as promised on the last video. Keep in mind that if you have not seen my first part of the High Slicer tutorial series video, I'm going to put the YouTube link description below or on this video, okay, if necessary, where you can visit my first part of the High Slicer tutorial video series, which explains how the High Slicer works. But as we get to that, I do wanted to make a reminder, okay, as I explained before on the last video, is make sure that you set your MIDI trigger off to the mode 3 position, okay, as well as setting your section on the bottom corner to mono, okay, and make sure that all your values are set on the default position. Now, from what I understand here in regards about the FX tool and the groove editor chain, is that it actually works sufficiently with the step slicer sequencer, which is shown here. Okay, so right now you can see that all the bars on the top are aligned to the empty position, is because we have not loaded up a sample yet, but we're going to get to that later on in a minute. Now, as we go back, okay, we're going to load a sample right now, okay, to show an example. But as I explained before in the last video, make sure you pay attention to your samples on what tempo or BPM was assigned to your sample track. So for instance, I'm going to load up a sample example here from the Chaos Cymatics pack, okay, known as Cymatics Last Minute, which is more like a an R&B type music that it is 100 beats per minute, and it's an A sharp minor scale. Okay, so with this from the Cymatics Calc Appreciation Pack, okay, make sure you set your tempo to whatever tempo is listed on that sample. So let's say, for instance, you want to go at 100 beats per minute. You can go ahead and just right click it and just type in 100, and that'll allow you to set it at 100. Of course, the other way, you can just drag along here, okay, just like so, okay, but you can still prefer the first method around, which is to type it in like that way, and that'll lead you to the right tempo gauge. Okay, so we're now ready to load up the samples here, and as I drag it along like so, the samples are now being played right directly to the High Slicer. Now, just to get a brief idea how the FX chains and the groove slicer works altogether, it's always best to put the slices amount up to 16. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because the manual states that the samples can only be played up to 16 slices within a sample track. Okay, because as you can tell with the step sequencer here, it can only go by a certain amount of slices, okay, within this 16 slice section. You can try to go more, but then you have to play around with the pattern sequencer here, which is like a snapshot of where you want to add additional slices within your track. But we'll get to that later on the next video tutorial if I have time. Okay. Now, just to stick with the basics, okay, we'll stick with the 16 beat slices, okay, for this track. So go ahead and select your auto slice section here, and then select the number of slices that we're going to try out, which is 16, okay, shown here. And then once everything's good, you click slice. And then afterwards, then you got to go by each of the slice tracks one by one by going to here, like so, as I am assigning each slice number by the slice track. Okay. And I'm going to be done within the next few seconds here. And once that is completely done, then you can go back to your step sequencer that you placed with and see if that will match up evenly, as so. Okay, so now that we have our assigned slices ready, okay, now we go back to here, and as I mentioned before on the last video, usually when playing directly with the step sequencer effectively, you can go back to saw mode here on FL Studio and then assign the number of bars that you want to play on your track. So for this tutorial example, we'll go back to playing 8 bars as I highlighted on the sequencer. And then as we go back to the slicer track, okay, make sure you turn off MIDI mode trigger on the off position in order to play back the step sequencer sample. All right, so as we play along here, it should play up the sample nice and evenly. And then when I pull up the step sequencer, you can see how it's playing out. Right now, I still set it on the 4th position here on the sequencer control section, as well as all the values are set on default, especially the speed. Make sure it's set to the /4th position, which stands for normal rate, normal speed. Okay, so now we got that done. Okay. Now we can actually go now to the sections of the FX chain. So here, the FX chain is basically your effects toolkit that's built in with the high slicer sequencer. Okay, that as you notice on the top section here, this will allow you to arrange your effects sections to your liking, whatever you want to start out first. So normally you can start out with EQ, then compressing, and then lo-fi, drive, comb, delay, and reverb, and so on. This is just like similar to where you see on Serum. If you notice on the Serum program that when you go to the FX section, you'll have certain effects like reverb, hyper dimension, flanger, and so on, and then you can actually arrange those bars, whatever you want to start out with, to arrange the effects of your samples or synthesize effects. So now, as I explain each one of them, okay, I've used these categories here. We'll start out with the 3-band equalizer. Now, the 3-band equalizer is pretty much like your standard 3-band frequency changer. Like you got your low, you got your mid, and you got your high frequency knobs. And then underneath here is like your Q knob, where you actually change the frequency bandwidth on each of the low band, the mid band, or the high band of your track. Okay, so as we set an example here, it will start to become active once you place it onto the on position. And so when you play the sample around, you can actually notice the changes when you're changing the frequencies of your sample. Okay, like Okay, so that's pretty much like your basic standard for arranging the EQs. with this high slicer program. Okay, so next we move on to compressor. So compressor, just like when you understand about, how to compress certain types of mixes or tracks or so on, like the compressor here actually arranges how high or soft that you want to make your sample mix have enough headroom to arrange your sample musical mixes. So you got your threshold, and then your ratio knobs, and then your gain knob. Now keep in mind that it does not show exactly how much values are arranged onto this compressor effects line, but it's more like a trial error basis where you just have to play around with the knobs to understand where you can find that great sweet spot to allow your track to become more higher or softer, okay, depending on your musical content. So from what I understand here with the threshold knob is that usually the higher the threshold, okay, once I put it on, it usually stays like more like a softer basis. But if you try to put it all the way up to the left hand side, you'll start noticing it gets a little bit louder once you put it at a very low value. Okay. Now same thing with the ratio knob. Okay, the ratio knob tells you exactly where it's pointed at. It's like a standard. It's like placed on a standard 1/1 level. Okay, but as you place it a little bit higher, then you'll be on the impression that it's going like around 2/1, and then the middle side will be like a 4/1, and then going clockwise to the right, all right, you might be placing it over to like, let's say 5/1 or 8/1, and then all the way to the right will be like 10/1 and so on. So usually, like in my opinion, if you set it onto the middle section of the compressor, excuse me, usually that sets to the normal rate for most hip hop or dance music and such things like that. Okay, and then for the gain knob, this is basically like just arranging the makeup gain for your compression. Okay, after you set your threshold to whatever volume percentage or minus value where you like to set your mixes at, and then you raise the gain slowly to see if the mix is loud enough to glue all together. And of course you got all the attack knobs and then the release knobs to either heighten or shorten the front side of the sample, as well as the release side. It actually arranges the tail side of the sample to see how long or short that you want to play the sample out with. And then of course you got the dry and wet knobs that tells you how you want to place that compression and effect when going all together in that place. So as we put an example here, let's put everything both by in the center, and now I'm going to play a sample out for this same track and see how that goes. Okay, so as I slowly turn the threshold down to the left, it actually sounds a little softer. Okay, but when you turn it to the right, it might sound a little bit louder. But usually, it's a lot better to put it at least a little bit to the left to get enough headroom for your mix. So that's what the compression is like, basically how it's controlled when using that kind of option. Okay, next is called the lo-fi. As you can tell, the section where it says the 4 letters lo-fi, it actually stands for low fidelity. And with making like lo-fi type of music, okay, it actually creates like one of those vintage or retro type like effects that can be played on your sample to make it like a relaxing or movie type kind of fashion. But here we got 4 modes. We got modes 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now modes 1, as I noticed when playing around with the lo-fi settings, the first mode plays like a very soft white noise, okay, that can be used for like wind noise backgrounds and so on. And then mode 2, it actually has a subtle white noise where it creates like more like a windy or a chaotic effect, where you can change the white noise settings to make it like at least higher or punctual, okay, depending on your sample track. As for mode 3, this creates like a granular type effect, where you can notice that it creates like a bit crusher sound when playing back your sample, which is great for like making those like a Terminator like sound effects, okay, within your samples. And then mode 4, it creates like a higher or extremely loud white noise, which becomes all fuzzy and gritty, just like when you're watching a television screen that's like either out of service and you hear that kind of white noise sound. Okay. Now, of course, with the lo-fi section, you got your bit knob, and then your gain knob, and the high pass and the low pass filter knobs, and then you got your dry wet knob. So the bit knob actually changes the bit ratio of your white noise samples within each of your modes here to create either like a crushing type effect, okay, whatever mode that you choose on. And then the makeup gain, of course, will just raise up the volume a bit to see if it's like loud enough to create that kind of effect. Well, in the meantime, the high pass and the low pass filters, this actually changed the frequency filtering rate to change the white noise values of the lo-fi sections, okay, as well as under mode 3, you can actually change the crushing settings to make it like a low bit rate or a higher bit rate, okay, while combining them all together to create those kind of spiffy sound effects. So we can play around each of the modes one at a time with the same sample track. So again, as I play along. Start with mode 1. As you can hear, there's like a little white noise coming out. So as you can tell, like mode 4 sounds like a little bit annoying at first, but then sometimes the fourth mode is can be good if you're trying to create like some sort of a scary type of music effect or any kind of thriller bass type samples within your track. Unlike mode 1 and 2, those are usually good if you're trying to make like a solo track for any kind of like a pop ballad song or rock type of music and so on like that. However, for mode number 3, this is kind of great for like making for any dubstep tracks or EDM or hip hop and any kind of dance music in general within that mode line. So that's pretty much what the lo-fi section is all about. So next, we now move on to drive. Of course, drive is basically sort of a volume control that actually helps increase the fatness of your sample track. Okay, which of course, what I play around right now, okay, this high pass and low pass filters is actually just changing over the filtering sections to resonance effect. Okay, so that's pretty much what's basically what drive's about. So now we get to the comb filter. Now the comb filter is one of the great features here at High Slicer because as you can tell, what the comb filter is all about. This actually changes the sample mix either in a constructive or destructive way, okay, based on the 4 knobs that you see on the screen section. So over here you have rate knobs, the depth knob, delay, and then feedback. And underneath you have certain modes that you're like to try out within the cold filtering section. So for instance, on the bottom of the rate knob, you only have 2 waveform modes. You got one that's on the triangle side, and you got one that's on the sine side, as you can see here. So when I select this, this slider button here from triangle, you'll now show the sine. And then press it again, it'll show the triangle, and then so forth. Same thing with this one, underneath the depth knob, this will actually change the stereo width of your comb filtering track. So right now it's on the opposition, but when I clicked it, you'll see it's going to be shown as width, which stands for stereo width, to change the stereo side when arranging with the depth knob of your track. And then next you got delay, which of course is just a way to change the effectiveness of the timing of the comb filtering when you want to kick it in based on your sample. And then the feedback, which is actually stands for FB as the abbreviation. This actually changes the intensity of the comb filtering impact when you want to intensify the comb filtering sound, okay, when playing on their sample. And then on the bottom here, this actually represents the value where you want it to push inward or outward of the comb filtering, where you want to make it at least enough punctual to set it outward to bring the comb filtering effect in, or you can push it outward, which is on the negative side, where it allows you to push the comb filtering backwards or back away from your sample mix. So as you can see, like so, when you click on this button section where it shows the plus sign, it'll show the negative. And after that, once you click it again, it goes with the plus, and then so forth. And on the bottom, you have, of course, your usual dry and wet level scales that when you want to arrange the cold filtering sections to take in place. So we'll play the sample again. We'll turn the cold filter on, and then you can hear how it sounds. Okay, so right now it's on triangle mode. Okay, we're going to play around the settings one by one. So first we'll try on triangle, and we'll try on the center width. Okay, so that's pretty much what the comb filtering sounds like when playing back your samples. Okay, so now we move on to delay. And delay, of course, this is the actual kind of effect that you want to change the timing of your sample to have those kind of echoing effects. Okay, just like reverb. Okay, delay actually changes the timing of the inside of the sample to either have that echoing kind of stuttering sound when playing it back. So here you got like two sections here on the left that represents the timing based on the knobs on the right hand side, which you got time L and then time R. So time L, which stands for the left side of the sample sound, you can actually have two modes to change the delay effects. So as you can see, it's under the MS section, which stands for milliseconds. Same thing with the time R knob. It's set on the MS for the right hand side of the sample track. So usually when setting up to this kind of section, this is like more like a freelance or free mode knob selection where you want it to, you know, change the delay frequencies freely, okay, without any synchronization. But if you want to have it synchronized, then you can actually go ahead and click each of the knob tracks here, and that'll change it into a time signature, which represents by the beat. Okay, so now it just changed from 124 milliseconds under to 1/16 of a triplet. Okay, well, of course we don't want to sound like that, so instead we can actually go ahead and try to change it by changing the knob sections on each one of them to make sure that it actually shows the actual sound that we wanted. So let's say, for instance, we want to go ahead and slide it to 1/8. Okay, so we just set it like slightly to the right hand side or clockwise. Okay, and if you want to change to a faster rate, let's say 132, then you just got to change it counterclockwise or to the left, like so. Okay, so for now, let's just go ahead and put it by 1/8 as a default for this tutorial. And of course, you got your feedback knob, which of course actually changes the intensity of the delay. But then on the bottom side of the FB knob, as you notice, there's another mode section that you can try out, which is called as XFB. This stands for extra feedback, which if you want to increase the intensity twice, which is a lot higher than your regular feedback knob, if you want to increase the powerful intensity of the delay effect. Okay, and of course you still got your high pass and low pass filtering, and then your gain knob, and then your dry and wet knobs to change the effect of when you want to kick it in or not. So as you play a little sample here, you can actually tell that the delay is actually working. So that's pretty much what the delay is all about. And then of course reverb, which is the final FX effect in part of this chain. Okay, you see like a square image that has like the center lines around it that look like you're being sucked into a tunnel. But in my opinion, it's more like you're being stuck in a twilight zone when seeing this dead end image for hours to go. So of course what it actually stands for is it actually represents a plate, okay, image that arranges the plate sound effects to make your samples to sound atmospheric or have that kind of special environment where it's like in a hallway or a plate room that can revert back all the sounds when playing the sample. So here you got your pre-delay knob, okay, which actually changes the pre-delay when you want to actually make the reverb sound to play at upon that effect. And then you got the decay, which stands for how long that you want to make the reverb last with. And then you got your high depth, which is like your dampness to arrange the pressure of the reverb to make it sound like it's building up the reverbness of the room. And then you got your gain knobs and then your dry and wet knobs. Okay, so we'll play around the sample again just to get an idea. That's basically what the reverb is all about, just to get an idea how it sounds like. But to me, it's also like a good feature because it creates those kind of monstrous effects, if necessary, when using a sample track that you want to create like some sort of loudness or a heavy type beat motion that you could play around with any genre. Okay, so now that we have finished going over with the FX chain sections, now we can move on to the groove editor. So the groove editor is a grid-like sequence pattern. As you can see, it's more like a ruler type image, as you can tell. And then each of the line sections that you see, there's like an orange dot assigned to every knob value. Okay. And on the bottom here is your knob sections that you can actually arrange the value where you want to arrange the grooves at. So this is where I want to get to this important lesson when it comes using the groove editor. The groove editor is actually linked back to your step sequencer as we go back to the high slicer program by clicking on the slicer tab. Okay, and then when clicking over to the step sequencer, this actually shows you where you want to arrange the groove sections of your slicing beats, okay, within the track to either randomize or play around with the beat section settings. And the way to access this is you have to hover down your mouse to the groove section here, where you see it's at a 0% rate. So when you click and then drag up all the way to where it says up to 150%, this actually will play around the effect of the groove editor based on what values that you assign on the groove editor track. And of course, when you slide it all the way down back to 0, it actually plays nothing. So we can give it a try right now just to see how it works out. But like I said before, with the step sequencer, it's always best to make sure you set it up to this normal rate position, as well as leaving everything else on default, especially on these values here, as you can see when I'm clicking on. Okay, and always make sure you place it on the forward section, okay, just to be safe. So going back to here on the groove editor section, you'll see a menu section on the bottom here where it says media import, preset, and then the save and the save as button. On the right hand side, you have a button section which says R&D, which stands for randomizer, and then you have a button below that that'll say reset, which is actually resets the whole sections of the group editing dots to go back to its original value position. And on the right hand side, as you can tell, it says 100%. Okay, as you can see here, next to the R&D section, this actually randomizes the probability of your groove editor track sequence here to know if you want to set it up in a stronger intensity when randomizing your values, or a lesser intensity that will play like at a very different shift value next to those ruler bars here. So as I can put an example right now, okay, when clicking the randomize button at 100%, you can see the values are automatically set to where the orange dots are being shipped at, depending on either on the left polarity or the right polarity, okay, next to your ruler measurement section. Okay, and then over here, if you kind of like the groove sections where it's placed at, then you have the ability to lock them on each of the place here without changing the values around. Well, sometimes they might change it, but either case, like on this part of the section here, you can just leave it as it is. But what I'm saying here is, when changing the values here on this groove editor track, you can actually play around back to your slicer sequencer, and then go back to the step sequencers mode here, and actually play out the sounds all together. So we're going to give an example right now when playing this groove editor track, and you'll see exactly how it's all played out. Okay, so as far as you can tell here with the groove editor, as I add the slicing modes on each of the values, okay, this actually helps play out, okay, when selecting your slicer tracks within the program, as you set the values here as well within the groove section to play as either what kind of random beat slicing method that you want to play around. Now, in my opinion, like this is like a great way to play it around during live session events when assigning your beat slicing track with this kind of method. But at the same time, you can also import your MIDI patterns within the groove editor to change the value settings as well, okay, without pressing the randomize button. or changing the probability, whatever you like. And of course, you have the ability to save the preset here, which of course I can show you right now, is that if you like this kind of preset when editing your groove sections of the track, you can go ahead and click on Save As, and I see I set up a folder here under the High Groove section folder under this MIDI, and then we can just play as tests for now as an example, and it will just save as a High Groove file together. Now keep in mind that this is also the same way when working within your slicer track, is that you can actually go ahead and arrange all the gate settings here as well within the slicer section, and then you can actually change the values one by one to make it more like a gate type effect, okay, which is also preferable. Enticing, more effective anywhere you want it. So yeah, so the possibilities are kind of endless when you're making a certain sample track within your beats, okay, whether or not if you want to play live or so on with this kind of method in your DAW. Now, just to give you an opinion, sometimes none of this is necessary unless, of course, if you wanted to sample out your tracks, okay, as I explained in the first video, that you can actually do it on MIDI, and then you can actually go ahead and render your samples on the fly, and you can actually use whatever effects you want to make the beat more effective in your latest music tracks. Okay, so that's pretty much the tutorial settings for both the FX chain and the groove editor, okay, as explained in the video. And later on the next tutorial, we're going to explain about the slice tables and the accent section of the High Slicer program later on the next round, okay, when I have time. But in the meantime, I hope you do like this video, and if you do, please give a like, comment, and share, and subscribe to my channel, Galatra Productions. You can also visit my SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/Galatra303. You can also visit my Spotify page, which will also be on the description, as well as my blog page and my main website down below of the description. Okay, so I hope this tutorial is useful for your next beat slicing project, and as well as I do want to thank the High Slicer team, okay, from High Plugins that actually fixed this program very well when it comes to playing samples underneath 100 BPM. But until then, I will see you next time on the next video, and I hope you stay safe and stay well, and everyone, you both have a wonderful Labor Day holiday. You take care, and see you in the next video.